Alright guys, so in today's video I'm going to show you how to take your wooden subfloor from this to this. Check it out. Alright guys, so finished grinding down the subfloor. As you can see, all of the dust, debris, and old paint that was stuck to the floor before is now cleared away. So this is what your subfloor should look like before you tile or pour self leveler. I do want to mention that I don't recommend tiling to plywood. It can be done, but I don't recommend it. I definitely recommend you using some sort of underlayment before tiling. I'm going to walk you through how to pour self leveler over a wooden subfloor. Alright, so we are now done securing the subfloor. This was the spot that had a squeak. No more squeaks. Over here too was bad. So now we're good. The next step is for this size room, we need at least an 8-foot level. So you put the level down on the floor, and then we are going to just get a feel for where the highest spot in the room is, and then I'll show you what we do next. But let me just go grab the level, and then we can check that out, and I'll show you how I do it. So just in the middle of the room, and you can see we have a high spot right in the middle of the room. I can see it with my eyes, but basically so now a lot of people are probably like, okay, well, you know, what do you do? So really, now that we know that the high spot is really right here, we're basically going to map the entire room based off of this high spot. So how do you do that? I like to use my laser, and what I will do is I set up the laser, and then I will set a height for this. Be careful. I really want to make a big disclaimer here. Depending on what self-leveler material you are using, there is limitations and requirements to the install. You always want to read the bag. You want to do a quick Google search. You can find the data sheet for any product that you are using on the internet. It's a very simple. You look at the instructions on the data sheet, and I could pull up a screenshot on the screen here so you can see the one we are using. We're using Laticrete NXT Level Plus, and the data sheet tells you what material you can use it on, what is required for the prep for the install, and then also the thickness requirement. Some self-leveling underlayment requires you to pour it at least a 1/2 inch. So if that was the case here, then we need to pour at least a 1/2 inch above this. So you just make sure that you are reading these instructions and these requirements before using the material. Each material requires something different. So the one we are using doesn't require wire lath over plywood. So I know most do. So just don't get confused that because I'm showing you this way with my product, it's not the same for every product. That's just a big disclaimer. Please read the data sheets. Please make sure you know what material you are using and how it, what steps differ and what's required for your specific product. If your product required a wire lath, the next step would be to put wire lath down in all the places where you're pouring self-leveler. In this case, we would have to do it the entire floor. So just be mindful of that. I don't want to see anybody do something incorrect based off of me. So, okay, next thing, we're going to map out the floor. I'm going to grab my laser and I will show you how to do that. Okay, so I pulled out my laser. I put it at a convenient height. I have my stick measure here, but you can also use a regular tape measure. Basically, the premise here is to just drop down your stick and check for the height. The purpose of using the level first was to find the high spot. I put my laser over here in the high spot, and I know that my material, which is Laticrete NXT Level Plus, on the data sheet, it says that it requires a minimum of an 1/8 inch pour. So that means I need at least an 1/8 inch pour over my highest spot. So I know my high spot is in this whole little area here. So basically what I did was I dropped this down, and it's at 29 7/8. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my height over here to be 29 3/4. So I have my 1/8 inch minimum. Now, what am I going to use to set my height? I'm going to just use some dry wall screws. And you want to put them in a nice pattern, especially in a room like this. So we're going to start along this back wall, and we're going to follow the joist just because it's a nice pattern. We're going to do 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, all the way through the entire room, and it's something like, what, 36 screws, 32 screws?
32 screws.
And we checked, and it falls in our low spot very nicely. So we have a joist running in our high spot and a joist running in our low spot, which is nice. So that will give us a nice, even map of the level of the floor. So we're just going to throw in the screws, then we'll go around with our stick, and then we're going to set it. Every single screw has to hit at 29 3/4. So at our high spot here, right now we are at 29 7/8, right? So the screw that we put here is only going to be up an 1/8 from the floor. Our screw all the way back here is going to be like about 1/2 inch up from the floor. We want it to hit 29 3/4. So our screw will be up 1/2 inch. So if you are doing this and you're using screws, which I recommend, it's the easiest way, just make sure you're getting screws that are long enough. You don't want to get, a 1/2 inch screw and then you need to pour bigger than 1/2 inch. So we're going to get to doing that, and then we'll show you the next step. Oh, really quick. So if you don't have a laser, which I suggest you do if you are doing this, it just makes your life a lot easier. You can do the same thing with a level. I would just plan out the same thing, start from one end of the room, and you're going to want to plan your screws, and then you can just bring the level, put it back on top of the screws, and make sure that it's level. So if you don't have a laser, I would highly suggest you get one for doing a job like this. They make lasers of all different prices, price points, and sizes, and everything like that. Mine that I'm using here is the Hupar 360 line laser. It's on Amazon. It was maybe a little bit over $200. It's Bluetooth, so you can hook up to your phone if you want to shut it off and switch it. You can hit the laser button, and it does vertical, horizontal, and the 360. So you can get a cheaper one, probably for like, I think $30 or so, if you just needed like a horizontal line. The green lasers are more expensive because they can be seen better in daylight. The red lasers are a little bit more tough to see. So, I would definitely recommend getting a green laser. And this is great for the price. So I will link it below for you if you are interested. Let's move on to the next step. All right, so we threw in all of our screws. We didn't set any heights yet. As you can see, we put them in a nice, neat fashion, 4 across each joist going down the room. What this does is it gives us a nice map or pattern or whatever, so that when we're pouring, we can start from the inside of the room and work our way out and just go row by row and just pull the leveler and make sure that it's going in the right direction. So since this is my high spot, I already predetermined based on the height, like we showed you before, that I need at least 1/8 of an inch. So you can see that this pin is sticking up from the floor, probably a little bit more than 1/8, but that's going to give us the height that we predetermined for the entire floor, which is 29 3/4, and we're right on it right here. So we already did these high spot pins, 29 3/4 all the way across. Basically, that's what you're going to do for every pin in the room. I'm going to start from one end and work my way out. Really quick, I just want to show you. This screw is not set to height yet, so you just take your measure stick. So you want to put the measure stick right on top of your screw. And you want to make sure that it's as straight as possible, because if you pull it too much in any one direction, you might get an off reading. So you want to make sure that it's as straight as possible. And the height we're going for is 29 3/4. We are about 1/8 away from that. So you can see right here, we need to actually screw this in 1/8. So I'm screwing it down and it brings our mark higher. So we screw it in. So we're going for 29 3/4, right? So perfect. Right on the mark. And that's how it's done. If it needs to be higher, you're screwing the screw in. If it needs to be lower, you're pulling the screw out. When you pull the screw out, it brings your measure stick up higher, lowering the measurement. When you screw in more, it moves your measure stick lower, increasing the measurement. So, do it again here. Okay, so I'm going to finish doing the rest of them in the room, and then we can go on to the next step. Okay, so after you set all your pins for your height, the next step would be to fill in any holes or any seams in the subfloor. So how am I going to do that? For my seams, I'm going to use a underlayment tape, which is pretty much like a aluminum foil tape. You can also use duct tape, or you can use a urethane sealant such as Sikaflex. So what I'm going to do is cover up any seams with the tape, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to fill any holes that I see with Sikaflex, because when they demoed the subfloor, there was hardy board here, so there's a bunch of nail holes that I want to make sure that nothing can get through. So that's what I'm going to do now. So just for example, here's a seam where 2 pieces of the subfloor meet. So I'm just going to take the tape, start over here. The problem is the nails are in the way. So there you have it. Basically, I'm going to continue on doing this for the rest of the room, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so now once all of your seams are taped and filled and you don't have any open holes in the subfloor where the self leveler might get to, the next step is to seal off the perimeter. So you want to seal off the perimeter of the room, you want to seal off the perimeter of the toilet bowl, the drain, anything where your self leveler might escape to. You definitely want to seal off the perimeter of the room, 1 for expansion and 2 because you do not want your leveler to escape down the base plate. We are on the 2nd story, so we do not want any mishaps. So I will demonstrate. This is what I use. It's the spray foam for gaps and cracks. So you just want to spray it along the perimeter. So this is what I'm going to do for the rest of the room, and then Okay, so we filled all the gaps, we taped the seams, we filled the holes. The next step is to prime the subfloor. So we're using Laticrete Prime and Bond. So depending on what product you're using, I'm going to tell you to read the instructions, check the data sheet, you can find it online, and see what it says to do. So that's what I'm going to do now. Prime the floor, let it dry, and then when we come back from lunch, we are going to pour the Self Leveler. Okay, so I'm going to just take the bucket, pour a little bit starting in the back of the room, and I'm going to spread it all the way out. Okay guys, so check it out. The floor is primed. We are going to let it dry. I made sure that there's a nice even coat. I didn't skimp. You want to make sure that it is covered very well. We used a scrap piece of foam over here to dam off the entire room. Sealed it with Sikaflex so that when we're pouring the Self Leveler, we have a nice end point right over here at the exit of the room. So now the only thing left to do now is to let this dry, and then once it's all finished drying, we can come back and we can start our pour. So stay tuned. Okay, so we primed the floor. We let it dry a few hours. We listened to the instructions, and it said to let it dry for 2 to 5 hours depending on the subfloor and the conditions. So since this is a wooden subfloor, it dried very quickly. There is no wet spots anywhere, so we are ready to go. Next thing I'm doing is filling up these buckets, and the bag requires 5 to 5.5 quarts of water for the entire bag. So I'm just getting 3 buckets ready for now. I have this cup here, so the 5.5 quarts equals to 9 of them. I already did this one, and I'm going to do the other 2 now just to get ready. So whenever you're doing a self-leveling pour, you want to make sure that you have a couple buckets ready, especially if you're doing an entire room and you're doing multiple bags, because this is fast setting stuff. You have to have a system, prep really well, and make sure that you're hustling. So I'm going to finish this up, and then we'll start mixing.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is pour these bags into the pre-measured amount of water. I'm going to mix all 3 because we looked at the back of the bag and we know how many square feet we need, and we're going to need at least 3. So I'm going to mix 3.
Okay, so we mixed our buckets. Now I'm going to just pour, and basically you just pour around till you reach your gauge pins, and then I'm going to move it around a bit with this to break the surface tension. So something's really heavy for me. I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. So just remember, this stuff is fast setting, so you want to try to move quickly, and that's the purpose of prepping really well, so that you know ahead of time what it is you need to do. For the most part, you'll see the Self Leveler will do what it's supposed to do. So basically right now, all I'm doing is just double checking that my pins are, well, the area is filled and it's reaching the top of the pin. You don't want to see the pin, you don't want to be able to see the top of the pin at all. It's not fill to the pin. You want to fill and skim over the pin so that you do not see it. You can just double check, you know, your height by just slightly going over the pin, and it's right there, and the leveler is covering it, making everything nice and flat. That's what I like to check for. So that's perfect. If it was showing, if you could see the pin head, it would need more, but this is good. Everything looks good. See this right here? I'm pretty sure this is a pin. Yeah. So to me, I want to make sure that that's getting covered. We are going to leave for the day, clean up, let this dry. We will come back tomorrow, check it out. We'll pull out our level, and then I will conclude the video and we will go over, we'll do a quick recap of the steps so you guys can see how it comes out when it's all dry. I will see you tomorrow. Okay, so our pour is dry. I told you yesterday we were going to check it, so. Come look. So over here, if you remember, we had a super low spot on the left side of the room. This was the high spot running right here in the middle. No more rocking. It's nice and flat, nice and level. Come check out the bubble. Make sure when you're checking for your flatness and your level that you do it from all different angles, because you know, you never know where the high spot or low spot might be, and you just want to make sure. I like to check on a diagonal, straight, sideways, but yeah, so this is very good. I'm very happy with it. So the next step is going to be to take my multi-tool, and I'm going to just cut out all this excess foam that's popping up. Only going to take about a couple of minutes, and then that completes this video. So let me get to that, and then we'll do a quick recap. Alright guys, so that concludes the video on how to pour self-leveler over plywood. So let's just do a quick recap. Step 1, we cleaned off any old dirt, debris, and paint that was on the floor using a grinder and a diamond cup wheel. Step 2, we set our heights for the floor so we knew where to pour. Step 3, we filled in any screw holes in the floor, we closed off any gaps and seams, and then we closed off the perimeter of the room, around the toilet, around the drain, etc. Then step 4, we rolled on the primer. Step 5, we poured the self-leveler. Then we waited for it to dry, and now we're here and we checked. So those are the final steps, and that is everything you need to know in order to pour self-leveler on plywood to make it nice and level for your tile install. So if you want to learn how to prep the subfloor, please check out my video on that. I did an entirely different video, so you can check on the steps before you get ready to pour the self-leveler. And then I'm going to do another video on what we're going to do as far as the underlayment is concerned for the uncoupling membrane. So there's a couple different things you can do, but if you want to check that out, you can check that video out as well. So yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, and leave comments below. Let me know how you like this video, and share with your friends if you think that they might get some use out of this video. See you guys next time.